select tonight's pick 3. 8, 5, 8.
Shabbat Shalom, everyone. 12 years ago, at this point in time, I was the interim rabbi at a congregation in Chicago. And there's certain things in our world that
yesterday, and she has what looks like a Ruth Bader Ginsburg.
certain things that are apolitical, believe it or not, in our society. One of them is the Secret Service. How do I know that? Because I got to know the Secret Service really, really well. The synagogue that I was serving was KM Isaiah Israel. It was directly across the street from the Obama's house. So think of Third Presbyterian as KM Isaiah Israel and Rite Aid as the synagogue. So it started off in the summer with just a little bit of security. And by the time the elections rolled around, there was a 3-block security cordon. And, you know, at that time, the day before election, everybody's a little nervous. And I was trying to think, what could I do to help out my friends at the Secret Service? Tom was in charge of the detail. So what did I do? The Monday night before the election, I ordered these giant coffee cakes from Boston. It's a place called My Grandma's. I had to call Tom and get permission to go to the Secret Service secret location to drop off the coffee cakes. And it just felt wonderful to be able to do something to help the Secret Service in that really quite amazing time. A couple of days later, as I was getting my ID checked to go to the synagogue, this huge gentleman gets my ID. He's in the Secret Service. He goes back, he checks his list, and now I'm getting a little worried. And he comes back, he takes off his glove, and now I'm worried about what did I do? He reaches out his hand and he said, "Thank you for the coffee cake." And so we need a little joy to celebrate Shabbat. And I highly recommend My Grandma's. You can order it, it's a favorite. And we continue now with our opening song, Shir Chadash.
Sing unto God a new song. Sing unto God and we'll all sing along. All the earth a new song unto God. Sing unto God on the earth a new song. I will sing song. Sing unto God and we'll all sing along. All the earth a new song unto God. Shiru l'Adonai kol haaretz. Shiru l'Adonai shir chadash. We turn to lighting our Shabbat candles. So I invite you to join me if you have candles in front of you. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lehadlik ner shel Shabbat. We offer blessing for our loved ones, children near and far, but anyone who you want to send blessing to, we offer this blessing for our community. Yivarechecha Adonai ve'yishmerecha, Yaher Adonai panav elecha v'chuneka, Yisa Adonai panav elecha ve'yasem lecha shalom. Shalom, shalom, yasem lecha shalom, shalom, ve'yasem lecha shalom. Shalom, shalom, yasem lecha shalom, shalom, ve'yasem lecha shalom. And we lift our cups as we welcome in Shabbat. We sanctify Shabbat with Kiddush. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, borei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu. V'shabbat kodsho b'ahava u'bratzon hinchilanu, zikaron lema'aseh v'reshit, ki hu yom techila l'mikrae kodesh, zecher letziyat Mitzrayim, ki vanu v'acharta, v'otanu kidashta, mikol hamim, V'shabbat kodshecha be'ahava uvratzon hinchaltanu, Baruch atah Adonai mekadesh haShabbat. Would you like some? It's just juice, don't worry. We continue with the words of Lechu Neranena, Psalm 95, from Psalm 95. Lechu Neranena, lai, 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 l'Adonai, lai, 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 lai. Shir Gadol, Lechu Meranina, Lai, 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 Adonai, lai, 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 Continue with Lechado D, greeting the Sabbath as the bride, welcoming her in. continue with Chatzi Kaddish. Itgadam ve'itkadash meraba Belmadi vrachirte v'amlich malchute v'chayechon uv'yomechon uv'chayedechon Beit Yisrael bangala bangala uv'izman kariv v'meru amen yeheshmera b'mevarach ve'alam ulal me'almaya Yitbarach, Yitbarach, V'yishtabach, V'yitpa'ar, V'yitromam, V'yitnaseh, V'yitadar, V'yitaleh, V'yitalal, Shemei Dekudasham, Brichu, Leila min kol birchata v'shirata, Tushbechata v'nechemata, Damiran be'alma, V'yimeru, Amen. Baruch hu et Adonai hamevorach. Baruch Adonai hamevorach le'olam va'ed. Baruch Adonai hamevorach le'olam va'ed.
Author of life, architect of creation, artist of earth, your works declare your holy name. Mighty rivers, turbulent seas, towering mountains, rolling hills, vast spaces of brilliance and grandeur. You created palette and paint, color and hue, shape and form, abundant and beautiful, glorious and majestic, full of mystery and wonder. Blessed are you, with divine love, you created a world of splendor. Baruch atah Adonai ha'ma'ariv aravim.
Day and night, show us the way, teaching us to number our days. When we rise and when we lie down, Ahavat Olam, Beit Yisrael, Amcha Torah u'mitzvot, chokim u'mishpatim, otanu l'modem day and night, show us the way, teaching us to number our days. When we rise and when we lie down, Ahavat Olam, Beit Yisrael, Amcha Torah u'mitzvot, chokim u'mishpatim, otanu l'modem. Baruch atah Adonai, Ohev Amo Yisrael. Praise to you, Adonai, who loves your people, Israel. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Leolam Va'ed. If you are still standing, you may be seated. ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודך, והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך, ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך וקשרתם להות על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובישעריך, למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי, והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים, להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם. אלוהיכם אמת.
There is a Hasidic saying that the real exile of the people of Israel in Egypt was that they learned to endure it. Today we stand once more at the edge of the sea, yearning to free ourselves from apathy and despair. Source of courage, do not let us be paralyzed by fear, nor stuck in our complacency. Move us to act for our own sake and on behalf of others with all our spiritual strength and moral intelligence. Empower us to believe that we can and will make justice prevail.
This is a Micha Mocha that Cantor Berman introduced a couple of months ago. We know that freedom is something that we continue to have to work for, justice something that we have to continue to work for. Not just a celebration of what we have, but a hope for everyone in our world. Again. פד אדוני את יעקב, וגאלו מיד חזק ממנו, ברוך אתה אדוני, גאל ישראל. Let there be love and understanding among us. Let peace and friendship be our shelter from the Baruch Ata Adonai, Haporei Sukat Shalom, Aleinu ve'al kol amo Yisrael ve'al Yerushalayim. Blessed are you, Adonai. You spread a shelter of peace over us, over all your people Israel, and over Jerusalem, and over the whole world we pray as well. Vishamu b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat, לעשות את השבת לדורותם, ברית עולם ביני ובין בני ישראל, אותי לעולם. כי ששת ימים עשה אדוני את השמיים ואת הארץ, וביום השביעי שבת שבת וינפש, שבת וינפש, שבת וינפש. We continue with the Amidah. I invite you to rise as you are comfortable in body or in spirit. Adonai sefatai tiftachu fi yagid tehilatecha. Adonai, open up my lips that my mouth may declare your praise. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu, Elohei Avotinu v'Imotenu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol, Hagibor v'Hanora, El Elyon, Gomel chasadim tovim v'konei hakol, v'zocher chastei avot v'imahot, u'mevii gula livnei v'neihem, leman shemo be'ahava, melech ozer Moshia u'magen, Baruch atah Adonai, magen Avraham v'ezrat Sarah. Ata gibor le'olam Adonai, mechaye hakol ha'torah le'hoshia, mashiv haruach u'morid hagashem, mechalkel chaim bechesed, mechaye hakol berachamim rabim, somech noflim ve'rofech cholim, u'matir asurim, ומקיים אמונתו לשני עפר, מי כמוך בגבורות ומידו מלך, מלך ממית ומחיה ומצמיח ישוע, ונאמן אתה להחיות הכל, ברוך אתה אדוני מחיה הכל. אתה קדוש ושמך קדוש, וקדושים בכל יום יהללוך הסלע, ברוך אתה אדוני האל הקדוש. You are standing, you may be seated.
God of old, thank you for the week that has passed. Thank you for this Shabbat. Bless those around me with your love and your light. Let your light shine on me as well. Help me to live a life of kindness and service, guided by Torah and mitzvot. Let me see others through your eyes, with compassion and understanding. Let me see myself through your eyes, with forgiveness and grace. May your goodness rain down upon us from this Shabbat until the next, and all the days of our lives. Baruch atah Adonai, Mekadesh HaShabbat. I see the spark of holiness in all that I do. May the light of God guide me through the darkness. May my prayers strengthen me, urging me to be present for those who are suffering. May I become a messenger of caring and compassion, a partner with God in the work of healing. May I be guided to fight injustice and to love harmony and peace. May God's blessing be with those who are in my heart as I utter this prayer. May all that is good in life lead me to passion and radiance. By your light, O God, may I see light. Baruch atah Adonai, she'otecha levadecha, b'yira na'avod. For the good in us, which calls us to a better life, we give thanks. For the strength to improve our world with our hearts and our hands, we offer praise. For the desire in us, which leads us to work for peace, we are grateful. For life and nature, for harmony and beauty, for the hope of tomorrow, all praise to the source of being. Baruch atah Adonai, atov shimcha, l'cha ne'eh lehodot.
Continue with a prayer for peace. Shalom Rav Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Shalom Rav Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Ki ata hu melech adon lechol hashalom. Ki ata hu melech adon lechol hashalom. Shalom Yisrael amcha tasim leolam. Shalom Yisrael amcha tasim leolam. V'tov einecha levarim et amcha Yisrael. V'chol עת ובכל שעה ישומרך. Shalom Rav Yisrael amcha tasim leolam. Shalom Rav Yisrael amcha tasim leolam. Tasim leolam. Tasim leolam. Baruch atah Adonai, hamivarech et amo Yisrael b'shalom. Blessed are you, Adonai, who blesses your people Israel with peace. Take a few moments now to offer the prayers of our hearts. Oseh shalom v'imramav hu yaseh shalom aleinu. Ve'al kol Israel, ve'al kol yoshvei tevel, ve'imeru We think of all those in our lives and in our community who are in need of healing. We'll offer the first verse of this prayer first to allow you to type names into the chat, or whether it's on Zoom or YouTube. Rabbi Crystal will hopefully be able to at least keep an eye on the chat, the Zoom chat, while I'll take a look at the YouTube to share the names that are typed in. There's so many who are in need of healing of mind, healing of body, healing of spirit. And we ourselves are sometimes in need of that healing of mind, body, or spirit. And so this first verse, as Debbie Friedman would always say, is for us, so that we can also have the strength and the courage to get through whatever it is that we're going through. May the source of strength, who bless the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say Amen. On this Shabbat, we think of
Andy Valdez, Ram Kozowski, George Gurneth, Kathy Lowry, Amy Weiss, Susan Horn, Andy Schaefer, Bob Schuster, Paul Surlov, Marvin Adelson, Letitia, Uncle Tommy, Sam Markland, Eric Kalora.
And from YouTube, we are also thinking of Arlene Smith, Mel Hackman, Barbara Solero, Robin Neft, Lynetta Left, and also Judith Bronston and Ruth Bronston. Of course, all those with COVID, and Sue Horn as well. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say Amen.
Shabbat Shalom, everyone. 40 years ago was the first time that I trained as a hospital chaplain. It was an awakening. I grew up in the Washington, D.C. suburbs. My high school had a small Jewish population. I was active in my temple youth group. Everyone, though, had very similar beliefs and ideas. My first day of training opened a whole new world. I was the one rabbi with 19 Christian divinity students. In our opening session, one of the seminarians recounted an encounter with a patient. She said, "I began by praying with the patient." Praying with the patient? What was this? She improvised 2 minutes of prayer based on her idea of what the patient needed. For me, praying with someone meant knowing the right blessing for an occasion. As we say, I didn't know from praying with people. Later, one of the students spoke about what drew him to seminary. He spoke about his call. In his experience, this was an impersonal encounter with God who called him to be a minister. Me, I decided to go to rabbinic school. But the most dramatic was a conversation with one woman, a retired Army officer now in divinity school. At lunch one day, the topic of reproductive rights came up. She was vehemently opposed to abortion. This was the first time that I interacted with someone whose beliefs were so radically different than my own. As we approach the election on Tuesday, we see that people have very different beliefs, dramatically different beliefs in our country. Think back, though, to 1787, as the Constitution was drafted. That was an exercise in compromise. The framers found ways to create unity in a diverse nation. As we think about the election, our concerns are much deeper than differences of opinion. We worry about suppression of votes, intimidation of voters, the integrity of the election process, the specter of violence, and whether people will accept the results of the election. Tonight, I want to look at the Jewish values. I want to find places for hope in crisis and share when leadership in difficult times can truly be an inspiration. The rabbis in Pirkei Avot, saying thus of our ancestors, offer these words: any dispute which is for the sake of heaven will ultimately endure, and one which is not for the sake of heaven ultimately will not endure. Debates for the good of people, those are the ones that endure. Arguments for self-interest alone, arguments based on just hatred, they turn to dust. Here's a classic example. It builds on the ideas that I shared on Yom Kippur. In the year 70, Jerusalem was a vassal of Rome. And in the city, there was a rivalry between two men, Kamsa and Bar Kamsa. One day, a merchant who was a friend of Kamsa, an enemy of Bar Kamsa, arranged a banquet. He sent servants with an invitation for Kamsa, and by mistake, the invitation went to Bar Kamsa. Bar Kamsa was delighted that he had received an invitation. He arrived early, but when the host entered the room, to his shock, he saw Bar Kamsa. He said, Bar Kamsa, I can't stand you. How dare you come to my party? Get out, leave. Bar Kamsa replied, since I'm here, let me stay. I'll pay for whatever I eat. No, said the host. Bar Kamsa pleaded, there are many sages and leaders here. Please don't embarrass me. I'll pay for half of the cost of the party. The merchant again refused. Bar Kamsa for a third time entreated the host, I'll pay the entire cost of the banquet. The host was adamant, and the attendants removed Bar Kamsa. Bar Kamsa was enraged, not just at the host, but at the rabbis who attended and did nothing to prevent his embarrassment. The next day, this injured man hatched a plot, and he denounced the Jewish community to the Roman army. The incident led the centurions to increase the pressure on the people. It spurred a revolt that led to the destruction of the temple. The rabbis say that sinat chinam, baseless hate, is what brings destruction. We've become a polarized nation. In this election, it's specters of fear that appeal to the worst parts of human nature. You know, at this point, there's so many commercials that I think I have half of them memorized. But fear, enough is enough. As a Jewish community, for centuries, we've been a minority. And the greatness of our heritage is that we've learned to embrace divergent points of view. We debate with compassion. Chavruta, when two people study together, it's not a success unless voices are raised discussing, but it builds a bond of friendship and a blessing from the divine. And this is our gift to bring, to encourage people to work for the good of all, and particularly with people whose views are different than our own. This is our charge in the days and weeks to come. But can change come in the very dark times? The example I'm going to share with you now is very controversial. Can a person who's inflicted great harm, incited others to hatred, possibly find forgiveness? In this story I'm going to share with you now, some people say the sin was too great. No apology can be accepted. But of blessed memory, Congressman John Lewis said that the actions of this person he found to be sincere. And it's a lesson for future generations. And this story has particular meaning because a year ago, Rabbi Gibson and I were in Montgomery, Alabama, and Selma. We walked the streets where these incidents took place. George Wallace was one of the most infamous figures of modern American history. He epitomized the racism of the South in the 50s and 60s. The words of his inauguration speech when he became governor, segregation now, segregation tomorrow, segregation forever. His attempts to stop Vivian Malone and James Hood from attending the University of Alabama, and efforts to block African-American children from white elementary schools stand as examples of hate. But in the late 1970s, Wallace became a born-again Christian. In 1979, unannounced, he went to Montgomery's Dexter Avenue Baptist Church, the church where Dr. King had been the pastor, and he apologized. In 1995, on the 30th anniversary of the march from Selma to Montgomery, he greeted the marchers and praised their work. He apologized to members of the Black community throughout the state. When he was elected governor for a third time, he won because of support from the Black community. He went on to appoint a tremendous number of Black leaders into significant positions in the government. He had changed. This radical change was possible. And so when we see tremendous strife in our world, we can think of so many examples where change has come. We can think of the rights of women to vote, rights for the LGBTQ plus community, efforts for people with disabilities. Change can come. Finally, on this Shabbat, an example of leadership in a time of great crisis. Senator Robert F. Kennedy was in Indianapolis on April 4, 1968, when Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated. Word had not spread yet through the whole world. And these were his words. I have bad news for you, for all our fellow citizens and people who love peace all over the world. And that is that Martin Luther King was shot and killed tonight. Martin Luther King dedicated his life to love and to justice for his fellow human beings. and he died because of that effort. And this difficult day, this difficult time for the United States, it is perhaps well to ask what kind of nation we are, what direction we want to move in. For those of you who are Black, considering the evidence there evidently is that there were white people who were responsible. You can be filled with bitterness, with hatred, and desire for revenge. We can move in that direction as a country, in great polarization, Black people amongst Black people, white people amongst white people, filled with hatred towards one another. Or we can make an effort, as Dr. King did, to understand and to comprehend and to replace that violence, that stain of bloodshed that is spread across our land with an effort to understand with compassion and love. My friends, the next days and weeks will be a time of challenge. We need to look to the best in ourselves and others. We need to draw inspiration and affirm the values of the great leaders that have come before us as we are standing in front of a potentially very difficult time. And I'd conclude this evening with a prayer from my friend, Rabbi Jonathan Klieger. May we each exercise our right and responsibility to vote in this year's election, as voting is a sacred duty of all citizens in a democratic nation. May we find within ourselves a calm center, a refuge from the unrelenting anxiety and anger that storms around us. May we treat everyone we encounter with graciousness and care, even when we disagree. May we do our best to banish contempt, for even as contempt demeans others, it also poisons our own hearts. May we stand up boldly for our principles. May we remember and embody the words of President Abraham Lincoln as he closed his first inaugural address to a nation on the brink of civil war. We are not enemies, but friends. We must not be enemies. Though passions may have strained, it must not break our bonds of affection. The mystic chords of memory will yet swell, when again touched, as surely they will be, by the better angels of our nature. Shabbat Shalom. Announcements for this evening. Cantor Berman is celebrating Sam's birthday, and we're hoping they're having a wonderful evening. Our musical program is made possible with generous support by Edgar Snyder and an anonymous donor. Torah study will be tomorrow at 8:30, Shabbat service at 9:15. Hartman Learning Together and Apart, the Future of the Jewish People is Sunday at 9:15. Remember to set your clocks back. Breshit, the Singing Torah, is at 10:30. Torah study is Wednesday at noon. Vote 2020. And we'll be having opportunities for 3 community conversations with the clergy. One will be Wednesday at 2, and another will be Wednesday at 7. Wednesday at 6:30 is planning to canning, and the second commemorative Remember, Reflect in Spirit and Action Torah will be at 7:30. And also the Remembrance and Studying Torah will be Thursday at noon. Rabbi Rick Jacobs will be one of the presenters. And we'll also have more community conversations. Introduction to Judaism will be Thursday at 7. Shabbat Shalom, everyone. We continue with the Elanim.
Please rise as you are comfortable in body or in spirit. Sorry, I'm just trying to stop the spotlighting. Aleinu leshabeach ladon hakol, latet gidula leyotzeh breshit, shelo asanu kigoye haratzot, velo samanu k'mishpachot ha'adama, shelo sam chalkeinu kahem, begor aleinu kechol hamonam, v'anachnu korim, u'mishtachavim u'modim, לפני מלך מלכי המלכים, הקדוש ברוך הוא, ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ, ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו
As we prepare now for the Kaddish, remember those who have passed away in recent days. Josh Sowers, the cousin of Derek Atkinson and Brianna McDonough. Henry Atkinson, the grandfather of Derek Atkinson and Brianna McDonough. Tanya Schwartz, the mother of Sophia Landis and Larry Landis. Sheila Malkin, the aunt of Lynn Rubinson. Reverend Toussaint Hill, remembered by Rabbi Gibson. We recall the yard sites of Lenore Adelson, Henry Burke, Rosalind Berenbaum, Sam Bordoff, Celia Bregman, Harry Davis, Louis Davis, Ida Ebenstein, Dr. John Ekstrand, Irving Epstein, Faye Fellman, James Gallagher, S. Morton Grenovitz, Louis Greenberg, Sandra Grobstein, Stephen H. Gross, John M. Gruskin, Racheli Hagigak, Jack Katz, Louis Kaufman, Lucille Lane King, Herb Cordish, Benjamin Edward Covell, Isidore Krauss, Rafael Levin, Harry S. Lutens, Ida Moretsky, Marvin J. Matowski, Harris R. Neff, Meyer Oranger, Clara Ottenheimer, Laverne Paris, Rhoda Price, Dr. Henry J. Rahm, Maida R. Rubenstein, Reverend David Barrow Ryav, Neil Siegel, Alan Smitty Smith, Rose Smook, Estelle Dubin Steiger, Jacob Steiger, Isaac Topel, Francis Greeny Trachtenberg, Leah Solomon Weinstein, Sabina Pinky Weinstein, Alan Zotman. Recall those who lost their lives in the October 27th tragedy. Remember those who have lost their lives, the COVID pandemic, to disasters in the world, because of violence in the world and in the defense of freedom, and those with no one to remember them. In remembrance and affirmation, we say the Kaddish. Yitgadal v'yitgadash shemei rabbah, v'alma divara chirutei v'yamlich malchutei, v'chayechon v'yamechon v'chayei dechol beit Yisrael, v'agala v'yizman kariv v'yamru amen. Yehi shmei rabbah mevarach le'olam amei amaya. Yitbarak v'yishtabak v'yitba'ar v'yitromam v'yitnasei, v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shmei grusha b'rechu. Ve'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbachata v'nechamata, tamiram b'yama v'yamru amen. Yishlama rabba min shemaya, v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'yamru amen. Aseh shalom b'ramav, hui aseh shalom. Aleinu v'al Yisrael, v'imru. Amen. May the source of peace send peace to all who mourn and comfort to the bereaved. Amen.
Amen. Our parsha being Lech Lecha, we offer these words of Lech Ilach. We don't know where exactly we are going. We hope God will show us the way. Lech Ilach, to a land that I will show you. Lech Lecha, to a place you do not know. Lech Ilach, on your journey I will bless you, and you shall be a blessing, and you shall be a blessing, and you shall be a blessing. Lech Ilach. Lech Ilach, and I shall make your name great. Lech Lecha, and I shall praise your name. Lech Ilach, to the place that I will show you. Lesimchat chayim, lesimchat chayim, lesimchat chayim, Lech and you shall be a blessing, and you shall be a blessing, and you shall be a blessing. Lech Ilach.
May you be blessed with love, with joy, with compassion, and peace. Shabbat shalom, everyone.
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.